welcome back to another episode of Lisa at the Edge. I'm so excited to have my still new-ish teammate Jaromir Kaspar joining us today, and we're going to find out about how Jaromir got into tech, if he always wanted to be in tech, his career at Microsoft, creating MSLabs. You'll hear about his very extensive family, children, horses, dogs. I can't wait. So let's get started. Jaromir, would you like to introduce yourself first?
So, hello everyone. My name is Jaromir. I'm from Prague, Czech Republic. Incredible city, I would say. I am tech. I don't know. Working in tech, I guess, is like 10 or 12 years, something like that.
Mhm.
But if I'm counting where I started and when I started, it's, I don't know, when I was 6 old, maybe. So I
Wow.
started to type with the computers, play with the
Yes.
computers. So it's like probably everyone, right, in the tech now is somehow connected with the technology. So I'm kind of living with the tech all the time, right?
Yes. Yes, and we'll come on to that. You've got interesting home projects, smart home projects on the go as well.
Yeah,
You're now working at Dell, but were previously at Microsoft, and we'll
right.
get stuck into that as well. But you kind of hinted at it there. So my first question is always one of a variation of how did you get into tech, or did you always want to be in tech? And so yeah, with you, I take it you always wanted to be in tech.
That's for sure.
Yeah. How did it start for you?
So my start was when my father bring the computer to home.
Okay.
So we started with some, I don't know, it was 386SX with 4 megabytes of RAM with quite a big disk. I think it was somewhere like 100 megabytes or something like that. And there was so many. So it was kind of old computer, I think, already, right? So back in time, it was probably some refurbished-ish thing. So it was kind of older model, I would say. But
Mhm.
I was playing there like a Sokoban, or how is it called? A really old game where you just push the blocks.
Okay. Okay.
So so this is
Is
how I
that
started, I guess.
like Tetris?
Oh no
Or
no no! It's where
older?
you push the blocks. So you have area where you have to push the blocks, and the only thing you can do is pushing, right? And you cannot pull the
Oh,
blocks. So
okay.
I think it's on a Nintendo it was a Voxel, and
Okay.
in the DOS world it was Sokoban. So this was a DOS computer, and I remember when I was playing these games, so I learned how to run these games. And one
Mhm.
day my father, came up with a new game that was called Doom, and it was not running on my computer, and I kind of had to figure out how to make it running. So I kind of find the tips how to make it running to to modify startup path and auto exec or all of these files, so
Yeah.
to work with the memory. And this is kind of how I started with it's not only about the playing games, it's not only about running the program, but maybe just playing about this and starting adjusting things. So this is probably the first time I was in with the tech. So via games, probably as everyone, right?
A
I
lot.
guess.
I've had a lot of people on the podcast who their first introduction to technology or computers was via gaming and needing to figure out how to run certain games. So they got a little bit under the hood. I'm not sure if that is. I mean, I could be entirely wrong, but I'm not sure if that really is going to be the situation for people these days, right? Because you can like
Yeah,
consume
that's
you can
so much
consume
easier,
games
right?
yeah, you can consume games from online
You
and
just grab a device, right, or whatever
yeah,
device you can just grab. I don't know, whatever device console, and it will be running well, I guess, and it's
yeah,
everything user friendly, so you don't have to do anything.
yeah.
Um,
And your kids are into gaming, right? And you've made sure that you're introducing them into sort of the old school games as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's not visible on the camera, but I started with all the device is called Odroid Go, which is the small device. It's probably not visible on the camera, but
Uh,
yeah, it's now better.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like this is better. Okay,
yeah.
so this device can run or will run all of these 16-bit games or 8-bit games again. I guess so. It's more or less like really oldish games,
Oh wow.
where you can play all of the, I don't know, the Game Boy or Game Boy Color or Sega Master System or Nintendo NES games, which
Mm,
is pretty awesome. So kids started with these games, right? I didn't want them to start with all of the games like all the other guys, right? So normally the kids are playing something on a phone to get entertained. I can see it with many families, right? There where they just handled some mobile phone where the kids are just swiping things. I didn't want them to do this, right? I just started properly. So we probably started with the Zelda. So I introduced them into the concept where they have to go somewhere, pick up something, and then
yeah.
with this thing they have to go somewhere else. So I think this is also a really good start for the programming. So it's more or less
Mhm.
like you have to do something to unlock something and just remember the thing. So it's not only about swiping left and right,
Yeah.
so it's not about jumping somewhere. So I can kind of introduce them into the world of the Zelda with Link's Awakening, the original one on. It's just amazing, right? Because now they are into the Zelda world completely. So they everything
You've
they.
been you've been telling me to get into Zelda as well.
And did you
When
try that?
no, not yet. So
You have
I
to.
over Christmas I got back into Animal Crossing on my Nintendo
Nintendo Switch,
Switch Lite. Yeah.
right?
And I actually really loved it, and I was getting right into it. But I've not played it for probably since early January now. It's hard to fit in all the time, right? But I did look at buying Zelda over Christmas, but I didn't. But I
You
probably
should.
will. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
buy it sometime. Before we actually continue into the story of your career development, you've got an interesting background there, and let's just talk a little bit about your family because it's a huge part of your life. Um, and so tell us a little bit about your family and also your extended family in animal form.
Yeah. So it started, I guess, 11 years ago when I met my wife. Maybe it's probably 12 years ago. Ah, the
You need
time
to check
flies. It's
that date,
crazy.
Jaromir.
Time flies. It's crazy, right? So,
Yeah.
so we had a first kid like almost 10 years ago. So
Mhm.
she will now celebrate 10 years. So yeah, it's probably 12 years ago I met my wife, and since then I have like now four kids.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, she had a Rottweiler, so now we have two Rottweilers. When I met my wife, she had one horse, so now we have. We used to have seven horses. We sold one because we didn't have the time to ride all the horses. So
Yeah.
now we have six horses. Yeah, and it's, it's kind of
It's a lot,
it's
right?
kind of
It's
it's a
busy,
lot, right?
but it's fun.
Yeah. Well, well, depends, right? So, for example, tonight the
Yeah.
kids, he was bumping into me all night, kicking me, and he was not sleeping all night.
So
So, nah.
you've not had a great sleep either. You're needing extra.
Probably 4 to 5 hours of normal sleep, and then another 2 hours of kicking into the head sleep and screaming sleep. so, so
I
yeah, it's kind of usual, I guess. So
Yeah, I think you do very well. You seem to be used to it by now. So with your busy family life, and you always wanted to be in tech. We've kind of spoken about this a little bit before. You wanted a job that felt like a hobby, right? You wanted a job that you felt like you enjoyed. And so let's talk about how you then got into tech. You went to university, right, and studied.
right,
Yeah.
I did study power engineering, so I have a degree in power engineering, but now I just don't know almost anything, right? Power engineering is kind of simple because all of the voltages are just quite high. So we
Mhm.
were also experimenting with 400,000 volts or even more when we were studying all of the cables and everything and the effects of this high voltage. Now I forgot almost everything. so
How
uh,
did
uh,
you how did you move from your power engineering
It was pretty
at
easy, right?
university
So when
into
I was
tech?
studying in university, the power
Yeah.
engineering was the simplest part of the power engineering to have a degree.
Yep.
So a part of the engineering to have a degree. So I kind of skipped the informatics because it was more or less about the Linux and programming and all of the languages and the complex things. And I was like, nah, it's complex. I want to go Visual Studio maybe, right? Something like that. And how about the Microsoft operating system? Yeah, nothing, right? Um, so then I just went to the power engineering and I started my first job it was in LG Electronics. I was doing some support, just normal plugging cables under the table, so helping
Was
people how to
was it
print.
like a was it like a help desk type role?
Oh yeah, so there was a small office in Czech Republic, so I was kind of assistant to the guy who was working with some branch office stuff. So he was making things together. There was a few servers. He was managing these few servers, so that we were just two IT kind of support guys.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, from here I then moved into the company where I was more or less like a sysadmin, because when I was starting plugging these cables, I was kind of wondering how the Active Directory works and how does it work in the bigger companies. So how the security is being there, how
Yeah.
domain join works. I didn't know,
So
right? No one told me, right? Probably no one else. There were some official courses, and everyone was like, "Yeah, it's kind of complicated as Active Directory, blah 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 blah." It was not so complicated in the end, right? But this, started some way to explore this, and there were not so many videos on YouTube. The YouTube was
yeah,
probably starting. There was no YouTube probably right back then, so
yeah,
you had to buy all of these books, and when you started to study the books, you found out that all of these curriculums for Microsoft Official Learning were just describing what's on the picture. So you opened it, and then 2 pages was about just there's a button, and the button is on the left, and you can click it. And like, what? So there
yeah.
were this thick books about almost nothing. So
It
there was
still
not like a
amazes it still amazes me today actually that there are books for tech and certifications. Now they obviously are still used and are still popular because I see I see other MVPs authoring books and things like that, but it still amazes me that they are still used today because things change so
Eh,
fast.
that's
Um,
true. I guess it's
but I
because
suppose they're more
if
like
you write a book, you get some points. I guess.
yeah, that's true. But I think as well, I suppose they're maybe more like ebooks, so they're easy to like keep up to date. But so
Yeah, it's
back in the day, you were a sysadmin. You came across Microsoft Tech. You wanted to learn more. You had a whole bunch of books with some pictures that told you to
it's
press
kind of
the
useless,
button.
right? You
Yeah,
always learn from the peers. You try to dig deeper. You try experimenting. Then you find out that for experimenting, you have to set up your own lab. The setting up the own lab, there were some guides that were also long. It's crazy,
yeah,
right? So I remember, for example, for System Center, there were guides that were like 120 pages, and you had to go exactly step by step by clicking somewhere, and in the middle of the book it took you like 3-4 days to set it up, and then you found out that something is not working, and then trying to figure out it was a nightmare, I would say, right? So
yeah.
and I was every time trying to have some kind of lab, so everyone had to have some kind of lab to learn himself, right, to learn how to do things
Mm-hmm.
correctly. So I guess everyone in tech was kind of setting up his own domain or his own web page, for example, to host his blog on trying SharePoint, for example,
Mm-hmm.
trying maybe Exchange for emails. So it the stuff to see like how it would look like, when he's doing so, and growing and accepting some jobs where you will work with this technology even more. So,
Mm-hmm.
and because I was naturally curious how it works, I kind of ended up where I ended up now. So,
Yeah,
and this is probably the way for everyone, right? If there is anyone listening who wants to know how to learn all of these things, just be curious how the things work, right? Now it's so much easier. You can just follow people on Twitter. They are tweeting their research. You can just go there. You can ask people to find the community, give it a try to something, and explore. Right? That's the way.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So did you set up your own lab then? I imagine that you did, and you got stuck in and started. What were the first things that you set up in your lab to try and
Oh my
learn?
God, I think it was probably some exchange or something like that,
Yeah.
and then you find out that all the resources are consumed. Back then, it was even crazier. There were there were limited virtualization tools, right? So
Mhm.
Hyper-V was just starting. It was virtual server, or how is it called? It was, it's virtual server 2005, something like that. I don't really recall. It was before the Hyper-V, right?
Yeah.
So so it was, everything was slow, everything was complicated. So you had to have physical labs. So in the another company where I joined, I tried to set up some lab with some old computers. It was always complicated, right? So and then when I found out that most of the admins, I will not name the company, right? So most of the admins were playing World of Warcraft instead of doing things. I kind of tried to move somewhere else. So my friend picked me from the company, and just I went to work for the Lukoil, which was a Russian company with gas stations around Europe.
Mhm.
And they had a really nice environment that was managed by a system center.
Mhm.
So it was another nice experience. We were migrating Windows XP to Windows 7 or
Mhm.
Windows 7, I guess, back then. So it was a really, really nice experience. We came up with first scripts, with first PowerShell scripts to set up some ADI infrastructure. So this was probably the first time I touched PowerShell,
Right.
and it was pretty obvious. You have to use the PowerShell to remember stuff, and if you don't use PowerShell, you will quickly forget. So I
Mhm.
remember we had the opportunity to attend some courses, and then I kind of find out that if you attend the course, it will not give you anything if you'll then not starting to use the technology over and over, right? If you just attend the course, you might raise some questions, but it will not improve you, right? At least not me, right? For me, the I was learning by examples, or by following some examples, try to reproduce it, and then try to improve it, right? So this is the way how I learned to progress in my career. And after that, after I think 2 years, 3 years in this local company,
Mhm.
again, I started to be bored. So I was looking into going into the Microsoft, right, for the first time,
Okay. Yep.
and my boss was like, "Hey, but take a look at Microsoft. They are always looking for someone, right?" And there
Mhm.
was 3 positions open. I remember there was one position for System Center Operation Manager, one
Mhm.
position for the security, and one position for the Windows Client operating
Mhm.
system. And this position was open for the PFE, which is Premier Field Engineers for Premier customers. There were engineers dedicated for the Premier customers who were paying a lot of money, by quite a big amount of money.
Yep.
I would say so. You basically had to let's say buy some hours
Mhm.
of the support,
Mhm.
called Premier Support, and you could consume these hours by, I don't know, workshops. So you could order. I would you could order a workshop. So it could be delivered on prem. So some engineer would travel on prem and
Mhm.
teach engineers how to work with the technology, right? So
Yep.
it was pretty cool because back then the world of the IT just opened to me, because I didn't know because I thought that I know quite a lot.
Yeah.
When I arrived with the group of these colleagues who were also PFEs, then I
Mhm.
found out I know nothing. It was literally nothing. Um, and the probably the first course that I had internal, was like PFEs teaching other PFEs how to teach the workshops, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So we were basically flying in the locations. There was a PFE, and he was teaching other PFEs what he found, more or less
Mhm.
like this, right? So I like it a lot. I learned so much stuff, and the first thing where I found that I don't know anything about operating system, for example, was if you, for example, look for Windows performance analysis, or Xperf tool back then. And now there is a Windows Performance Recorder where you can record all of the events that are happening in your operating systems, and you have the performance recorders. I mean, the performance providers that are providing performance records for this, tool, and it's like 1,500 components in your operating system that you can record, and you can record it in every detail from the boot of the operating system. It was incredible. I was like, oh my god, I don't know anything. So
So it's
and
like being basically chucked in at the deep end
yeah,
by
so
Microsoft.
it was crazy. That's exactly right. So had to pick my technology, what I will, go in deeper. So I was kind of, dropped into the water, and I tried to swim, right?
Yeah.
So I knew something about a Windows client. I knew something about the Hyper-V. Always wanted to play with the Hyper-V, right? But the Hyper-V, no one want to, work with the Hyper-V because, no one was using it, right? I mean, I found myself that there were a lot of customers then using it.
Hmm.
So it kind of evolved. There was Hyper-V in 2012 R2, 2016, right? So it got better, right? When I was when I was going into the Microsoft Windows 7 2012 just released, so Hyper-V was fundamentally improved there.
Hmm.
So it was happening to be a thing. So actually, from the Windows client, I was hired for Windows client. I choose the Hyper-V as a secondary technology, so Windows
Okay.
virtualization as a second technology. So, and I choose this path, and I did. I think I did good.
Yeah.
I did choose it really well. So now
And then
it's.
when did you switch to working like fully on sort of Hyper-V or storage spaces direct?
I think after 4 or 5 years, I switched completely to doing just Hyper-V and
Mhm.
less Windows client, a little bit of security, but
Mhm.
we were doing more or less everything.
Yeah.
Everything means that we were doing things like if someone had an issue and there was no engineer available, you had to go and kind of figure out or help the customer, because the way the engineers were working, we had to deliver, I don't know, 1200 1300 hours to customers. So if there was no one to do the job, you had to just pick the job and just fly somewhere over to Europe and just try to deliver or try to solve the issue. So it was not only about a Windows client or Hyper-V, it was the security, it was Windows operating system itself, platforms,
Sounds
Windows
like
platforms, everything.
sounds like not only a great way to learn about all of the different Microsoft technologies, but also going and visiting different customers
Oh yeah,
give you
so
like
many customers,
would give
so
you
many
like
customers.
such a great insight into different industries, the way customers would implement things, their different issues
Yeah.
that they would have. Like that is a whole that's like a great way to get tons of experience, right? And
Oh yeah.
I know because you've you've talked about this, the amount of air miles that you racked up, and the various places that you travel to. I mean, it
It's
sounds like
entire Europe, definitely entire
it was
Europe.
full on. You went everywhere all
And
the time.
everywhere. Yeah, I remember when I was on the crit seats. I was in the Scotland actually. The only thing I remembered was the hotel that was the only one that was empty. Um, and I think I thought that I managed the booking, and when I arrived to the hotel like 2 or 3 a.m., they told me they don't have any space. And then they somehow arranged it that I was able to stay there for one night, which was good.
Is that it? Was that in Scotland?
It was in Scotland, yeah.
We take care of people. That's what we like to do.
I went to the customer. I think I didn't solve the issue, and then I went back. So
Oh,
yeah, it was because it was
not
like
all good trips.
Thursday. Oh yeah, but this is how it kind of worked. So
What was
when there was a
the
crit sit, there was an engineer on site, and we were more or less like hands for the engineer that was for the support engineer who was coordinating everything, to asking to collect the logs and everything. So if the customer was not able to collect the data, we were the hands. I would say hands and eyes and
Mhm.
hands, or hands and eyes, something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
on the
ha-
ground, hands on. Um,
yeah, we were hands, ears, and eyes. So only right. So we
where
were listening what you need to collect, and we were collecting the data for the support. For the support. So yeah, kind of expensive, I guess, but that's what you will do when when the company collapses because of some issue in the Microsoft technology, or maybe issue of I don't remember what it was back then.
yeah, where was the best place that you traveled to?
Mauritius. I
Yes.
was in the Mauritius. Yes, it was pretty good. I
Yeah.
was helping the customer to teach them about Storage Spaces Direct,
Mhm.
um, and it was amazing. I choose the
I can
hotel with a
imagine.
beach.
I can imagine.
Was pretty
um,
good.
but I think because so I mean I've had a lot of people on the podcast because obviously I started it during lockdown, right? So a lot of especially the early episodes were talking about how lockdown had changed people's roles, right? People were used to traveling and getting out and about and seeing people, and that kind of hit people really hard. But I think you're kind of the opposite. It sounds like you did so much traveling, like you were constantly traveling, that actually you really benefited and really liked the
Oh
change in
yeah,
pace and
I
being
kind of
and
liked it.
being
Yes.
yes and being like more at home and not having to travel.
Yeah.
Um, and is that what kind of kick started your thought of looking for another job and maybe trying to get a role where you
Also, yes.
yeah,
So there
where
are there are some changes also in Microsoft going on. I don't want too much comment on it here, but yeah, if anyone asks me, we can do one to one on it. But definitely, when I was in the first year in this role, in a PFE role, I was trying to accept almost everything because I was new,
Mhm,
and usually when you are not known on the market, then you have to travel a little bit more. I tried to, be, let's say, 3 weeks out, 1 week at home. And
mhm,
once I kind of didn't manage it, I clearly remember it because I was in 5 weeks in a row. I was like Monday morning or Sunday evening, I had to go to airport and I went back on Friday morning or something like that. And like
yeah,
5 weeks
well,
in a row. And I had small kids at home, first
yeah,
one. I mean, yeah, it was tough.
yeah,
My wife was exceptionally good in this. I mean, she didn't divorce me.
good.
She kind of survived, but yeah, that was the change where I was like, okay, let's do it 2 weeks only, and 2 weeks to try to stay at home. I always managed to do numbers, which was good.
Mhm,
But as a PFE, it was not only about the numbers; it was more or less about how you contribute to the community, how you actually in contributing into the customer success.
mhm,
So it was quite a lot.
yeah,
And then I changed more with more kids. I try to go with the DSC customers.
mhm,
DSC means where you are dedicated to one customer only.
yep,
So
yep,
I had just, let's say, one customer that was my main customer, and then
mhm.
I was accepting just others, traveling less and less. It was possible, and when COVID happened, I was able to deliver everything remotely,
Yep. And
which was
how did you find that switching to delivering everything remotely? What were the sort of pros and
so.
cons?
First thing is, so it depends, right? So when you are talking to people, when you are delivering the workshop, and there are, let's say, 20 people, and you are talking, sitting somewhere in front of the computer, and the people, they usually turn off their cameras, which is okay, right? I don't mind.
Mhm, mhm.
But then you find yourself talking, and you are talking on about the slide, and then you just say, "Hey, guys, are you listening? Is there anyone?"
Yeah, that lack of
And
sort
then
of
you are waiting for
that.
30 seconds, and then
Yeah.
okay, probably no one is here. And then no, we are here, we are listening, right? And you don't have it, you don't have any feedback. You don't know if the people are sleeping or. So I found this really tricky
Mm.
because when you are talking to people in a room. Uh, or in the class, right? You can watch people. You can see how they are interacting. If they have any questions, you can see on them if they have any question. If they are really,
Yeah, you can see if they're, like, understanding or if their facial
if you
expressions
should
are
slow
sort of
down or
yeah,
go faster. You don't really
yeah.
know, right? So and I didn't find this very effective, right? Just
Yeah.
showing slides. So I kind of starting to develop the idea of delivering the information a little bit different,
Mhm.
and especially when I found PowerShell and how it works. And
Yeah.
then this kind of
Talk
started, right?
talk us through discovering PowerShell, loving PowerShell, and then creating MS Labs. Let's talk about that, and then we can talk about
Oh
maybe
yeah.
something else.
So everyone kind of knew that the PowerShell is a big change,
Mhm.
and what you can do with the PowerShell, because there were a lot of scripts popping up when the PowerShell was released. There was huge interest in the PowerShell itself. I remember that we were using some scripts to deploy labs for workshops. So you had a workshop, and a workshop had two components, and one component were PowerPoint slides, and other component were labs. And the labs were usually some set of the virtual machines that you had to deploy, and it was not consistent, right? So either it was just importing virtual machines, it was more or less every time it was importing machines only, and um, when you had to arrive on site, you usually did it the way that you arrived on site on the first day. You went to the class. There were some computers. You prepared the computers. Usually there was some operating system, and then I just applied this set of the images and unpacked it usually, for example, only,
Mhm.
and imported some VMs, and the lab was kind of prepared, right? So I came up with the idea. Hey, there was one workshop that was importing the machines, and it was so much easier. And so I went into the script and I looked at it, and it was like pretty simple. It was just there's a folder, just run it. You had to execute it in the folder, so I started to modify it, and so it knew where it was in the folder, so I was able to just run it. I wanted to run it as an admin, so I just added the code to write to be able to right click and run it as with a PowerShell and automatically elevate it. And then I kind of improved this code over and over, not just importing the machines, but maybe importing the DC and then creating other machines. And when there was in Microsoft, there was the email that was saying, "Hey, we are looking for someone who will help us with the new technology of storage spaces, right?
Uh-huh.
And developing the storage spaces workshop on the new technology." And there was this old, I would say, old storage spaces, right? So old storage spaces required shared storage, but the new storage spaces, it was the new project. And then everyone was talking about it like, hey, there's something going on and we will not need any shared storage. And oh, okay, it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
We will have some nice technology we will be able to play with at home, maybe to store some movies, or maybe so I think it will be a lot of fun, right? So I was like, yeah, I want to contribute, right? So I
Mhm.
started to contributing, and usually it was like a group of 4 or 5 people,
Mhm.
contributing. Everyone did his own part, and I was the only one who was like, I want to do labs, and no one wanted to do the labs, right? Because it was usually complicated. So what I did, I wrote my own set of the scripts that will prepare the lab consistently, right? And whenever someone will be delivering the lab, he will be only, transferring only some limited amount of the data. So just have a domain controller that was prepared by some lab master, and then some, parent disk that will be just imported and VM dynamically created, right? So I was like, oh, that's cool. So I started to developing this, and when we had first synchronization on this workshop, and the first kind of delivery, internal delivery to teach other, I would say, master trainers that would deliver these workshops, I spent 1 week every evening with one of the colleagues, and this helped me. I would say, without him, I would not be where I am now, right? So every evening I walked into his condo. It was just near to the hotel in Seattle,
Uh-huh.
and we went there, drink some wine. I still have somewhere in the photo. So and we were rewriting my code, and it was so ugly. I mean, it was first time I was writing the PowerShell, so I didn't know how to correctly format, how to use the brackets, how to do things. So I was kind of trying to figure out everything, and he was like walking over my code. I was like, ugh, rewriting it, like, this is ugly. And he was showing me, and I was learning so much about out of this, right?
Yeah.
And then we developed the scripts, and I was like, hey, we need to develop a script to create a domain controller for you, right? So, and I was like, let's use the DSC. It's a new thing. Let's use the new thing called DSC. And again, we were learning. I was typing the code. I was day by day, I was better and better. And then I was able to, after this week, I was able to correctly format my code, uh, you know uh, be able to improve or deliver new features to the code by myself. So yeah, without this guy, it would not be possible.
That's such a cool story, and it's an important thing to share, right? Because like you had taken a piece of code and then you had taught yourself so much, but actually by working with someone else and sharing that with someone else and having it like reviewed and working on it together,
Right.
that's how you improved. So I suppose like if anyone is trying to learn PowerShell right now, or even has been doing PowerShell by themselves, more or less for, a while, it shows that there's a huge amount of benefit in then like working with someone else on it or sharing it with someone else and getting feedback and learning how to do it better.
That's for sure, right? So, and this is something I wrote into the MSLabs because when I had this experience, I wanted to share it, right? So,
Yeah.
I wanted to explain, guys, hey, this is the way you can do it, right? So, when I started to write, it didn't end up with these, scripts to deploy your virtual machines. It's just a start, right? And when I started with these machines, and you have a consistent way to set up some environment, then the next step was, hey, let's use this environment to show you how you can properly manage, for example, machines, right? So this was with the times when the nano server was introduced in Windows Server 2016, right? So people didn't know how to work with the nano server, right?
Yeah.
It didn't have any local GUI. So there was a Jeffrey Snower,
Yeah.
and he was trying to explain people, hey, guys, use the PowerShell remotely. Use it
Yeah.
remotely to manage multiple machines. You don't log into the machine to run PowerShell code. You have PowerShell remoting. You have invoke command, right? So you can do everything this way. And
Nano
and
server totally takes me back. So this is so funny because my like entry into the tech world was probably I was in just before Windows Server 2016. And then it was 2016 getting deployed and implemented where I was working, and me working with my friends and colleagues, Kenny and David. It was those guys, like that's where I learned like virtualization from I always say a non-technical perspective, but do you know what I mean? You've just taken me back. I totally
yes,
forgot about nano
but a
server.
nano server, it's so incredible. Yeah, the MSLab can still deploy nano servers. It's super easy. You can just create nano server using parent disk, and the nano server is really small. I think the VHD is like 300 megabytes, and when you deploy these machines, uh, it will start in like 7 seconds because it doesn't require reboot. It will just immediately start, and you have login screen into the nano server in 7 seconds. So I'm still using it. If you, for example, are running a complex lab like a stretch cluster in a laptop, and you don't want to create a normal virtual machine, because when you have stretch cluster, it needs to replicate to other side, and there's so much data to replicate, and it's so slow if you're running it in the laptop. So I was using, for example, Nano Server for these VMs in these VMs. So for nested VMs, I was using Nano Server because it was so incredible small, and it started in just so small amount of the data that were required to start it. But unfortunately, the Nano Server totally missed its objective. It was supposed to be a new operating system for S2D right? So
Yeah,
the idea was to have on the nodes only nano server. That would
yeah,
be incredible. I would love it, right? To have a headless operating system that was crafted on all the components where I mean, there's a lot of bloatware in operating system because the Windows has a history, right? So
yeah,
the nano
yeah,
server tried to be the minimum amount of the operating system you have to run some code,
yeah,
and in this case, it was too much. I think it was just too much, right? So
yeah.
I tried the running nano servers, and there were some weird issues because of the missing components, right? So like yeah, weird issues, right? It's like maintenance issues. You tried to do maintenance and kind of didn't work because there was some component missing because the component required GUI or something that was only in server core. So then the PMs probably just said that, okay, let's cancel it. Let's go back to the Windows server with GUI. Unfortunately, there was one PM was like, no GUI, server core. So we have a server core, and this is fundamental, right? This is fundamental for security, for everything, to have not to not have a GUI. So no one will have motivation to log in directly into the server. You should not ever log in into the server, only into the management machine or machine where you manage everything from, right? So this is the basic premise of any script that I wrote, or any scenario that I wrote in MSLabs, that you never ever have to log in into the machine you want to manage, only into the management machine where you will work with the code. And then the PowerShell itself, it's so cool that you can keep it as a documentation for everything, and have it in the notepad, so you can search the text within the notepad, right? Unlike if you normally do traditional documentation, or traditional step-by-step documentation where you do screenshots, and the people have to follow the screenshots, right? So I faced it so many times when I had a workshop, and there was a step that, for example, that was requiring you to install some feature in operating system. And there are multiple checkboxes that you have to check to say that, okay, I want to have this feature, that feature, and then you have to scroll down and that feature, right? So
Yeah, and you could miss scrolling down and miss a box.
right.
Yeah.
And there was always in the text like, you have to install this feature, that feature, and this feature. And there was a screenshot with only 2 ticks, because the other tick would be, you would have to scroll.
Yeah.
So if you didn't include the other screenshot, the
Yeah.
people will just do the same what is on the screenshot itself. They normally don't read the text at all,
GUIs,
right?
GUIs are good for people like me who don't work in PowerShell to get like a visual of what's happening. But in
Right.
terms of being in production, I can totally see that if you were just using the GUIs, there is a higher risk for mistakes rather than coding it and using something like PowerShell and, like you say, to get that consistency. So
That's
that's
very thing. That's very good. That's very good. That's right. That's 100% right. Right.
gold
So the
star.
GUI is good for validating the steps and what was actually done. Right. So you can run the PowerShell script and then go to the, for example, GUI to check what actually happened.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
is exactly what we are now doing with the Dell GEOS labs.
yeah.
That you have the steps with the PowerShell, and then you have like expected output in the GUI. So either you have a PowerShell output, which is okay, but from the PowerShell code, you can see, okay, this was probably registering Azure Stack HCI and Azure Arc. So you can go to Portal, and just in the Portal, you are able to see that.
So before we jump on to the Dell the Dell GeoLabs, so basically you created MSLabs to help other people learn like you did with PowerShell. And
Exactly.
you
So initially,
created-
it was a project for deploying the lab for
okay,
study spaces
yeah.
direct.
And then you expanded that with multiple scenarios that people could work through for specific features and use cases so that they could learn, right?
Exactly. And I was trying to, share the message about, hey guys, don't log in into the machines. Use PowerShell for documentation, right? So whenever I was demonstrating something like how to work with certification authority, because I wanted to learn myself, right? So I
Mhm.
adjusted the code, for example, for MSLab to be able to do something, right? So for example, if you do stretch cluster, you have to have multiple subnets. So I adjusted the code in the lab config so you can configure it to have multiple subnets, and to be able then to demonstrate this lab, right? So I tried to, uh, adjust MSLab to be able to have a consistent way to deploy something, and then whenever someone will follow some instruction and fail, it means either he did the steps wrong, or something is wrong in the operating system, and either way he can submit an issue, and I can explore with running the same lab config and same configuration, and see, okay, oh, this is the OS problem. So I was able to submit the bug to the product group, for example, I found so many bugs. And I was, constantly, to internal discussions, sending like, hey, is this supposed to work, or is it still
Yeah,
broken, or are you fixing it, or we didn't know, okay, let me explore more. And
yeah,
I kind of teach also people about MSLab internally, and everyone was like, and Mike was like, Jaromir and his MSLab, we know. So it was funny, right? But I
and
was
then
trying to explain it's not for me, right? It's for you guys. I didn't
yeah,
want to create it because I want to promote myself and get a promotion. I want you to help guys, right? Just
yeah.
try it.
Well, it's a super collaborative way for people to learn. I and to share your learnings, but also, like you say, like if it allows you to find bugs and be able to feed that back, then that's a win-win, right? So let's move on to joining Dell and joining the GEOS team at Dell, and what you've been working on since then. And you mentioned it earlier. We've kind of created this new Dell GEOS lab in addition to MSLabs. And so, talk us through a little bit about that. What's the difference? What do you get within the Dell GEOS labs? Obviously, it's focused, again, you mentioned it, focused on Azure Stack HCI, right, and Azure Arc. So talk us through a little bit about that and what you've got there so far and what you're working on next.
So first of all, why I left Microsoft? What's
You don't
funny,
need
I
to say
was
why you left Microsoft, but why you joined Dell would be awesome.
okay. So there's a story behind it, right? So why I joined Dell. So first of all, I felt that the MS Lab is big, right? So and there Azure Stack ACIOS, it's kind of big, and we knew about Azure Stack ACIOS before it was released. So when there was an internal conference just before the COVID happened, it was in January. And then in February, everything was starting the locking down only for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
and
a long 2 weeks.
and I was and we were in the Redmond for the conference. There was internal conference, and I asked my manager if he can stay for one more week together with my friend Jan Mortensen in Redmond, right? Because we want to meet all the PMs, show them what we have, how we can help, how we can do the better documentation in docs and everything. And we met so many people, so many PMs. We were presenting our work together. And ultimately, we were also presenting our work to vice presidents, right? So, and the problem was that the showstopper was that we didn't want to move to Redmond, right? So because of we have the horses, here there's the kids riding. We have so many things here in Czech Republic. I would have to abandon the family. We have houses here, weekend house, things we have to take care about. So it was not possible. I was willing to work at night. No problem for me, right? I could
Yeah,
just, join all the night calls, work like that. But they were kind of considering it, but it was a showstopper, definitely. So it was not possible.
yeah,
And then COVID happened. So and then we were kind of waiting if something will happen, if someone will use the potential of the people that I kind of get it together. I had a team, me, myself, Vladimir. He recently contributed to MSLabs with the Linux support. Pretty amazing guy. And then Jan Mortensen. So this was like a team that we wanted to offer to cooperate with the PMs. So basically, the GEOS team, right? The,
yeah.
the
Like
idea
the
was the GEOS team, right? So
yeah,
you are cooperating with the PMs, providing feedback to PMs, providing feedback to engineering, to
yeah,
developers. Like, hey, this is okay. This feature, not really. Maybe you should try this. And then writing a scenario, and then publishing the scenario as part of the documentation, right? So exactly this we wanted to do. We wanted to have even the Lisa. we had one colleague that was kind of Lisa thing. So she would be responsible for cooperation. And because we were just guys, and you know how it's with the guys, and we need
yes,
some
I do.
front we need a front face, right? So we need to have a front facing someone who would help us, because we need someone, right? Because we are too much techie, and we sometimes not behave correctly. So we needed something. So we had even the colleague to be the, I would say, front facing to community, to PMs who would be able to travel back to Redmond. So yeah, so we had this idea. We then were waiting, and then Kenny tweeted like, "We are hiring. We need a colleague who would like to do Azure Stack HCI." I was like, "Oh."
That sounds
It was
interesting.
for US, and I was like PMing Kenny. I was like, "Hey, do you have anything for Europe?" I was like, "Oh, yes." Let me create for you a position. I was like, okay. I was like, maybe it's a good idea to move to Dell. So he told me a little bit about Dell GEOS, and it was like exactly what we wanted to do in Microsoft internally. The
Yeah,
the, the group that will help cooperation between the engineering, creative documentation, help sales. I was like, oh, this is GEOS.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Just
the same.
for anyone who's listening who hasn't maybe heard any previous podcasts and explaining what our team does. So GEOS stands for Global Engineering Outreach Specialists. It's a long name, so we shorten it to GEOS. And we sit within the infrastructure solution group at Dell. So we don't sit within the sales org. We sit within the infrastructure solution group. What is that? It's where all product engineering, product management sits. And so we sit within that org. And there's our team, which is focused on Microsoft Hybrid Cloud, but there's also a team focused on VxRail. There's a team focused on data protection, PowerEdge, and there's also a team focused on our new Apex as a service offering at Dell. So we're all together, we are GEOS, and then we've got teams focused on certain products. And we are there to be the sort of field-facing arm of our product management teams, our product engineering teams, our product marketing teams. We're there to do sales and pre-sales enablement, to evangelize our products, to support in certain opportunities with big customers, make sure we always get the technical win, and provide that deep technical expertise to our pre-sale specialists. I do a lot of getting people on board and up to speed with the Microsoft Hybrid Cloud over sort of market and the opportunity, and what is Azure Stack HCI fundamentally, and what is Azure Arc, and how does it all fit together. And I kind of like set the scene to like roll everybody else in. We do a lot of also in our team, we do a lot of working closely with our Microsoft counterparts and making sure that Dell and Microsoft are working better together and fostering that relationship. So yeah, that's kind of what GEOS does. It's a really cool team. There's a lot of variety. And like you said, Jaromir, we also feedback and get to interact with product management and product engineering, which is really cool. And I know that everyone is really appreciating and seeing huge value in the labs and stuff that you are creating. And so let's talk about that for the last like 10 minutes. Let's talk about the Dell GEOS labs, what's there, what you can see in them, and what you're going to add in the future.
So the Dell GEOS Labs is more or less like a combination of everything we were talking so far, right? Yeah. So it's my experience in delivering the labs or delivering the workshops, writing the documents, like a step-by-step documents, how to set up something, while still having the dense information on how to set up things. So for example, now with Dell GEOS GitHub, you will find how to set up MSLabs. So there are some small tricks. If you want to know more, you can just go to the MSLab site and go into the lab config and learn a little bit more. But still, there's like a basic information on how to set up MSLabs. And then there are some guides on how to set up, for example, Azure Stack HCI. And it's a step-by-step document. And every lab here is referring the original MSLab scenario. So in MSLab, I will keep scenario.ps1 file plus lab config if there is any. That will consist of all the detailed information, and it will be more or less just a PowerShell script. Like I today tweeted the scenario for AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, on Azure Stack HCI. It now has how many lines? A lot of lines. I mean, it's like 1,500 lines now. I just added, for example, automation account to be able to set up Azure Update on AVD machines that are running on-prem in Azure Stack HCI. So you'll be able to schedule updates using Azure Updates, right? Or you will be able to set up monitoring. And all of these steps, it's so big that the step-by-step guide would be huge, right? So I just, for example, provide for MSLab and AVD just a basic setup of creating VMs, connecting these VMs to Azure. But all of the other steps like enable monitoring, enable automation account, it's only in MSLabs, in the lab, in the scenario.ps1. So always you can start with the step-by-step guides that are on the Dell GEOS GitHub. You can start with this one to set up some basic technology. And if you want to learn more, you can always go into the PowerShell script, and you will go there anyway, because if you don't want to all the times end up in click next scenario in step 1, step 2, step 3. You just want to paste the code and forget, right? Especially when you already know how the technology is working. If you want to, for example, set up your environment that is physical environment, you want to set up a Microsoft deployment toolkit. What I do now, I just wipe it, start the lab, paste the script, and now I have an MDT. I just paste another script to deploy physical hosts, and that's it. I don't have to go step by step. That will take me like 2 times more time. I just can paste the one that is in MSLab. So you still have this way to learn step by step, and then have a way just to paste the code, right, and
Yeah,
forget,
yeah,
and then go in for the scenario. So increasingly, you are learning a little more and more. So you find yourself, this is like a steep curve learning. Like when you don't know anything about a PowerShell, you will start 1 week. Then next week you will be able to use PowerShell, like paste the code, whatever you want. And then other week you will be able to modify variables in the code, so you are able to use it not only in MSLab but in the production environment. And then
yeah,
you find yourself adjusting the code and modifying it so it will suit you. And after a few weeks, you will find yourself writing your own code out of the code that you can search in MSLabs, because this is what I do now, right? I don't remember how to create a deployment in Azure. So what I do, I just go to the MSLab where I remember that I was doing something like that, and I just go into the code and try to adjust it and test it over and over. And if something goes wrong, I just wipe an entire environment, deploy it again with MSLab, um, and set up everything over and over. So when you have the experience of the lab, it's proven like I was running it like 10 times or 20 times to make it really working well.
yeah.
So it's tested for you.
So we'll pop the links to both MSLabs and the Dell GEOS labs in the show notes. So definitely go and check them out. Give them a go. Feel free to provide feedback on them. Hit Jaromir up if you need help. And so that brings us to the end of the episode. But I actually tweeted I asked this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I got so many interesting responses that now I think I'm going to start asking people on the podcast. So this might be a difficult one for you, given that you pretty much knew you were going to be in technology from the age of 6, Jaromir. But if you weren't in tech, what do you think you would be doing?
Uh,
Could you-
I saw this question when you were preparing this podcast. I was like, hell, what I would do, right? So what does it mean tech? Like computers, or because for example, now what I was doing is I was playing with a smart home system.
Yeah.
I'm using Loxon, which is pretty cool, where you
Mm-hmm.
have a server and you can basically adjust it, so you can build kind of your own application based on the configuration file that is not requiring you to know any code. You are but just connecting things like logical objects. So and it's kind of created by electricians and IT guys, and it's pretty smart.
Yeah.
And probably
You've got
if I
the
was not be in the IT this way with the computers, I would love to build the smart homes where I would be able to deploy like a big rack with wires where you can, something you can just switch on and switch off, connecting appliance. Like if you want to arrive at home, you want to, for example, open the gate, but with open gate, you also want to enable lights. You also want to open the garage. So with one click, you want to do multiple things.
yeah.
And these are so many things that need to cooperate together. Like for example, I need to do the ventilation hoods, and when you have recuperation, that is also changing the air in the house, and you need to make this work together. And there are multiple technologies, so there's new area to explore, and this is what I also really like to do as my other hobby. So
Yes, I know. Yeah, I have seen your smart home. Um,
It's a weekend house,
No,
not yet smart
well, yeah.
home.
For your weekend house, and it puts my Alexa speakers on Hugh likes to shame. Okay,
I
so
mean,
I'll let you off with that. You can do, if you weren't in tech the way you are now, you'd still be in tech, but you'd be doing something
probably.
around smart homes. Yeah.
Because you expected something I will be working with horses, right? Or animals.
To
Nah.
be honest, I didn't. I don't think I was going to get you out of tech with that question.
The
Um,
problem is the problem of this is with working with animals. It's a nice hobby, but to do it for
yeah,
work, it's a tricky one. And if you
yeah.
know how to work with animals, then for working every day is the same. With the IT, you can switch off, right? With animals, you cannot.
No, you can't.
So
It's like me with my horse Bailey. I go there 5 days a week. I take care of him for those 5 days, but I go there and like I chill out. I ride, I groom him, I have fun. It's nice. But the people who are there looking after the yard 24/7, that is their life. They cannot switch off, and because those animals need them at all hours of the day. So yeah, I get that. I get that. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jaromir. Glad to have got you on eventually. Thanks so much for sharing your story with everyone. And yeah, if you have not yet checked out MSLabs or Dell GEOS Labs, go to the show notes, go and have a look, get involved, and reach out to Jaromir if you need anything. Yeah?
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
please, anytime, right?
Yeah.
On Teams or Twitter, or just submit an issue on MS Labs or the Geos GitHub, and I will definitely help you, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Jaromir. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.